Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into nighttime. We're still reeling from a wild week 2 in college football, but we're going to try to keep it together and do our best here. I'm Patrick Previty, and that's Matthew Bracker. We had a top 5 team go down this week, 3 game-winning field goals, and Clemson put up 56 points on App State in the first half. But first, we'll start with the game of the week.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it. This Texas-Michigan game, the battle of the cover athletes, right? Now, Texas on the road in the big house. How about Quinn Ewers, man? So inspirational. Look at this. Connecting early with the gravedigger, Isaiah Bond, former Alabama receiver, for a big gain on 3rd and 13. Now, that drive would fizzle out, but Ewers would march down the field, rolling out to find his tight end, Gunnar Helm, for 6. Now, second quarter, 7-3, running back Jarek Gibson would cut through the Michigan defense, putting Texas up 14-3. Now, 3rd and 2nd, Davis Warren would throw a ball that would be tipped up and picked off by this Texas defense that would result in 3 more for the Longhorns. Very next drive, Texas forced, well, I don't know about forces. What was that? What was that? They forced another turnover. Now, Ewers and co would capitalize. They would throw a dot in the end zone here to Matthew Golden. What a great name. Put Texas up 24-3 at the half. Now, Texas would score again at the end of the 3rd, but this game was never in question. Texas would win it 31-12.
We may have a new #1 team in the nation on our hands. Texas looks extremely good, and Michigan, and they're going to have to figure some stuff out. You know, I do respect their defensive line. They got NFL talent and places around that team, but they need to figure out the quarterback situation and where they're going to go from here.
And the running back situation. Yeah. Donovan Edwards, you need to step it up. You're the cover athlete. What are you doing, man?
No, exactly. Now, it's time for the upset of the week. Notre Dame, Northern Illinois taking on each other in a, it seemed like you wouldn't have thought a heavyweight bout, but that's what it was today. MAC teams entering this game were 0-51 against top 5 teams. First quarter, it looked like it would stay that way. Riley Leonard gets the Irish on the board early. Next up, it is going to be a prayer answered by Ontario Brown, looking like Antonio Brown. He'd lead the day with 225 total yards. We might have a game on our hands. NIU would get a field goal soon, make it 10-7. Then Riley Leonard again, but this time it's no good. A tip drill going to NIU. They would then try to get some points up on the board. It's 13-7, and it's blocked.
Oh my God.
So they're going to have to go into halftime. That kid loses his scholarship. Marcus Freeman is going to give them an amazing halftime speech and send Jeremiah Love into the end zone, 14-13. Now we're going to skip way ahead, all the way to the end of the game. This is after a bad spot and bad review. You'll have to trust me. For the win, do you believe, Matthew?
I believe.
16-14 NIU. The coach is crying on the sideline. Notre Dame's fans are crying in the stands. This is bad news. Now they're going to get one last shot, 62-yard attempt. His long for his career is 53. It had no shot. That was blocked again. He also lost his scholarship. NIU makes it 1-51, and they are now ranked for the first time in the top 25 since 2013.
Crazy game.
Wow. Where does Notre Dame go from here?
Oh, I know. I mean, are you feeling upset?
I am feeling upset as a Notre Dame homer, as a Notre Dame fan. I'm very disappointed, and Marcus Freeman is definitely going to have to start answering questions if this season kind of goes downhill.
Oh, for sure. He needs to regroup with that locker room, and he just needs to be their leader.
Yeah, absolutely. But those weren't the only college football games this week. Let's go around week 2 in college football. Now we're going to start off with Iowa State. This is for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. Another game-winning field goal. That'll be a theme later, 20-19 in that game. Tulane, Kansas State, wild week for the Big 12, but a defensive touchdown here saves the Cats midway through the 4th quarter. Man, Big 12 has kind of had a wild time this week. Now we're going to head over to the ACC. Syracuse, Georgia Tech. Kyle McCord says, don't forget about me. One of his 4 touchdowns on the day. GT would make it close later on, but too little, too late. Now to the Big Ten we go. Bowling Green, Penn State. It was the talk of the town in the noon slate. Bowling Green was up at the half, but Penn State pulled away late here on that long run.
Now Oklahoma State, Arkansas in double overtime. Look at Ollie Gordon. Good time to have the longest run of the game. RJ Harvey is better though. Next up, we have Kansas and Illinois. Now, this was a pretty fun game here, but you can see the Illini punch it in at the goal line to get a ranked win.
Underrated this week.
Yeah, that was a good game. Then it's Houston's last chance to knock off Oklahoma, and they just got nothing going on here.
He would essentially
Yeah.
just try to lateral this back and nothing.
But lastly, it's the nightcap. Oregon with a game-winning field goal as time expires against Boise State. What a week of college football.
Absolutely, really good week of college football. When we look at the next week's games, week 3, I think people
Very
underestimate what could it potentially be brought from that week.
Right.
But then you just look at week 2 in college football and had all of those amazing games.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
upsets happen.
It was very refreshing after week 1. You know, you play a lot of these FCS schools, and it was a lot of good matchups.
Absolutely. Now you know what time it is right now. Swords and shields.
Ooh.
I'll start with mine. My sword this week is Kyle McCord. McCord, he comes over from Ohio State with that huge group of transfers over at Syracuse. He had 32 for 46 for 381 and 4 touchdowns against Georgia Tech. The third quarterback in the ACC over the last 20 years with 350 yards passing and 4 touchdowns in consecutive games.
He looks really good. I really like Syracuse right now. But my sword for this week is Cade Klubnik, right? 24 for 26 for 378 yards and 5 touchdowns. He put up what's probably going to be his best performance on the year, bouncing back from his awful, awful game against Georgia. It was pretty impressive.
Great bounce back game for sure for Clemson. Now, time to get into the shields. My shield it's a little different. It's not a defensive player. It's a special teams player, Luke Elzinga, the punter from Oklahoma. Brent Venables, after the game, said the Sooners were fortunate to win, and it was mostly because of field position. He had 8 punts, 5 inside the 20, and 3 inside the 10.
Oof.
Made a big difference in a 16-12 game over Houston.
Hey, that's a special play from a special player on special teams.
Magic.
My shield, best defensive performance of the week, is this Colorado offensive line. They got to Shedeur 6 times, only allowing 16 rushing yards on the day. Not only that, but this line exposed Colorado and completely destroyed that locker room chemistry. Talk about a defensive performance.
What a masterclass from the Colorado offensive line. We're kind of playing around with the shields here, but kind of makes sense, I think.
We like to have fun here.
All right. That's all the time we have for the first segment today. Coming up next is Daniel Valdez, where we're going to go around college football again, talking about the biggest takeaways from week 2.
Let me ask you, bud. Is Texas back? All right, I put on a brave face a lot, but this year, I'm really scared that they are, man. Okay, they just beat Alabama. They're gonna be top 4 in the rankings, and last year, they beat us 48-0.
Yeah.
It was humiliating. We're the Oklahoma Sooners. We were the best ever. We were talk of the town. We had Baker, Kyler, and Jalen 3 years in a row. And now, are we good? I don't know. We haven't won a national title since 2000. We're number 18, I think, and nothing matters, dude.
Sometimes we build up these walls thinking they're impenetrable. But sometimes you have to knock these walls down to build up bigger and stronger ones. And you got to be tough through that. It's hard being an Oklahoma fan at this time, but grass is always going to be greener on the other side of the hill, buddy.
Is it? I cannot live through a Texas national championship. I can't. I'll never recover.
Welcome back, everybody. We have Daniel Valdez joining us. Now, there's a lot going on in college football. First of all, welcome in. Welcome back.
How you doing?
Nighttime regular.
Yeah.
Yep, happy to have you. All right, so we just talked about the biggest upset of the week. Notre Dame losing to NIU. Where does Notre Dame go from here?
Yeah, for me personally, I think Notre Dame, what they need to best do is to try and regroup and try to get themselves to be better on for trying to get themselves to be a lower seed for the college football playoff. They have themselves a schedule that's not really the easiest, but it's not really the hardest. So that strength of schedule might come into big problems. And the main problem for them is their loss to NIU. How will the committee view it?
Right.
Because yes, we know that the group of 5 will get one automatic team in. If NIU is that team, I think the committee will look a little bit more favorably upon Notre Dame. But if they aren't, then how will they favor them against a 1-loss SEC team or 2-loss? Because, all they can know is they could have lost to Georgia, but all we can know is that Georgia is the #1 team in the country and they lost to them, while Notre Dame lost to an unranked group of 5 team at home.
Yeah.
So how will the committee view it?
Yeah, and it's tough because, honestly, you look at Notre Dame's schedule, and I really thought this was going to be one that would favor. I certainly didn't think they would take a loss in week 2.
No, it's definitely surprising, and you made a great point. They would probably get put over, or I'm sorry, another team from the SEC or the Big Ten who's got 2 losses, who maybe didn't even have an appearance in the championship game, probably would get put over a Notre Dame, even a 1 loss, as is. I mean, we'll still have to see. It depends on how USC, FSU, teams on their schedule end up panning out. How does the ACC look as a whole? But definitely think that they're working, an uphill battle right now. Okay, so there are 3 teams in the nation right now, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that are probably way ahead of the rest of the country. Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas. Of those teams, who is the best in the nation, and would you put another team in that group?
I think the number 1 team for me would have to be Georgia. Georgia, they have a ton of talent. They have a ton of big games. But not just that, they have themselves potentially one of the toughest schedules in the nation as now. They have, of course, that big win against Clemson in week 1. But also, later on this season, they go to Bama, go to Texas, play against Ole Miss, play against Tennessee. All 4 of these teams are ranked in the top 25. Georgia has also a tough schedule, but they also have a ton of talent returning.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're my pick. I think that they're doing the best in the nation right now. But moving on to another team I thought would do really well that's kind of not really struggled out of the gate because they've been winning games, but what is going on with Oregon? They don't look as dominant as I think they should.
Yeah. I think the big thing for me is that Oregon, they're going through a lot of transition. They do have themselves a lot of transfers in. But not just that, they're now going from the Pac-12 where they would play against teams like Stanford and Cal to now the Big Ten, where they have to play against Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. This is a much tougher conference for them than they experienced in the Pac. So they're going through a lot right now. So definitely it's going to be a little bit of transition for them. And of course, Dylan Gable, they do kind of have like a history of injuries. So I do think that they're going to eventually get the ship right, but they got to get ready because they host Ohio State, Washington, USC, and go to Michigan.
Yeah, and Oregon was outgained by Boise State as well in that game. Like, they have tons of issues, and it was like a miracle that they only scored 24 points. My shield last week was Idaho. They had 3 fumbles in that game. They just got to clean it up. They also gave up 4 sacks against Boise State. It's a mess right now.
But Boise looks good, though.
Boise State is a good
they look
team.
good.
I mean, no doubt about it, but still, if you're going to be the upper echelon in the Big Ten, you got to take care of business.
But moving on to another former Pac-12 team is Colorado, and I mean, geez, they did not look great this week. How cooked is Colorado, and do you think that Dion is going to leave with his son after the season?
I do think that Colorado is going to be cooked.
Ooh.
They are playing against 4 ranked teams currently in their schedule, but not just that, they also have to go on the road to UCF, Texas Tech, Kansas. It's going to be a really tough schedule for them. I don't even think they're going to make it to a bowl game at this point.
Really?
Yeah, because their schedule is like significantly tougher, and losing to Nebraska in this kind of fashion where you just got blown out the gates, it's going to be really tough for them to even win in a much tougher Big 12 now.
Well, yeah, hold on. Okay, so let's say that they don't make a bowl game. You got Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders going to the NFL, potentially top 5 picks. Obviously, if you're Colorado, you're not going to fire Deion Sanders. Does he end up leaving and going somewhere? What do you think? If they don't make a bowl game this year, say 5-7, 4-8.
I don't think Deion's going to be leaving because simply just, if they do go to the NFL, which NFL teams are hiring for Coach Prime? Because,
I don't think there's anybody out there right now.
It would be a mistake.
Yeah, that it's going to be hard for them to try to figure out, who's going to be the one that's going to be firing their coach for Coach Prime, when Coach Prime still hasn't proved anything with Colorado at this point, besides improving them from a 1-11 team to 4-8.
Yeah, and there's calls about just his game management and how he can actually coach on the sideline. He proved to be a pretty decent coach at Jackson State, but still at the end of the day, it's Colorado. It's a bigger school, bigger stage. You want to be able to take care of business. Now, we should go to the former national champions, Michigan. What do they need to do to get back on track?
They need to regroup and they need to get better because their schedule this season is a lot tougher than previous years before. As mentioned before, they play against Ohio State at the end of the season. They also play against Washington, Oregon, USC. They have themselves a really tough schedule. So, and of course, they're dealing with a lot of transition. They lost a lot of their players and a brand new head coach. So, definitely do think that they are very much going through transition. Could they make it to a bowl game this year? Possibly, yeah, but it's still going to be pretty tough, especially with all these big games on their schedule.
Wait, you don't think a bowl game, you think them missing a bowl is possible?
Not impossible per se.
No, wait,
it's only
possible.
not impossible. It is
Okay.
possible for them to make it to a bowl game, but just, you know.
I was about to say, I mean, they didn't look great against Texas, but
Yeah.
it is Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Donovan Edwards, you know, I really thought he would come out of the gates a little stronger. 19 carries for, I think, like 68 yards. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I know we talked a little bit about Nebraska a little bit ago. Dylan looks really good. Do you think he can lead Nebraska to a Big Ten conference game?
I don't think they're going to get to the Big Ten Conference Championship game because, let's face it, this Big Ten is really, really tough.
Yeah.
Penn State is in the running. Oregon's in the running. Ohio State's in the running. Even this loss to Texas, Michigan is still kind of in the running. But also USC and others, they're still in the running. So this Nebraska team, they have to go through a lot of teams and hope those teams lose. But I do think they'll be a dark horse. I think they could maybe pull off an upset against some of those teams.
Okay.
Yeah, Pat Mahomes Jr., he's got his work cut out for him, but we'll see what he can do. All right,
The biggest glazer in college football.
should we buy stock into Syracuse? They got Kyle McCord, got all those transfers. The ACC seems to be pretty wide open. What do you think about Syracuse?
They do seem like a dark horse to me. I'm not exactly sure if I will buy into them just yet because simply they just are pretty new and their only real test is against a Georgia Tech team, which kind of brings the question of, was Georgia Tech ranked because they were that good, or was it because they beat, at the time, number 10 Florida State, who is not even receiving a single vote?
Yeah, that could be very telling to FSU's level of play. But, I mean, I thought Syracuse looked really good. And Kyle McCord, man, like, he had a very impressive game. But I think time will tell with that. Now, moving into week 3, it's a little underwhelming at first glance. What is your favorite game of the week? What is your matchup?
My little dark horse game for that week is going to be Oregon against Oregon State.
Okay.
This game is going to be back. Oregon State, they feel angry that they were left behind by Oregon, and they're also hosting the Ducks. So this is going to be a big matchup right in Corvallis, and who knows, potentially the Beavers could pull off the upset.
Really?
Yeah, okay, so I definitely think maybe Oregon should be awake by now. There should be some great, halftime speeches, like one that Marcus Freeman probably, hopefully gave.
Yeah.
But I definitely can see a team like Oregon State, if they can pick up the pieces from whatever's left of them, then they could potentially beat Oregon. I think it'd be mainly
not
Oregon beating
impossible.
themselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
not impossible.
Yeah.
Now, a game that I liked was Boston College, Missouri. Missouri hasn't done anything yet this year other than just not give up any points. They played Buffalo and an FCS squad, and they haven't given up a single point yet this year. So I like that game as in a potential Boston College is ranked. They're a good ACC team. Here they come in to spoil Missouri's Cinderella-ish season.
Right. I really like, I know I'm a little biased, but I really like this UCF TCU game. I think it's going to be a really good test for our Knights, but we'll get more into that next segment. Now, we did have breaking news late last night as the Pac-12 announced their revival project as they plan to add Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Colorado State in 2026, essentially forming the Pac-6. Now, what are your initial thoughts on this? And did they get this, right? Did they get the right teams for this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good pick. All 4 of these teams have been really big programs for the Mountain West. They've all been contending. They've all won Mountain West championships at some point, and they all have competed big. However, there's something interesting to take note of. According to NCAA rules, for an FBS conference to exist, you need to have 8 members. They're going to be at 6. So who will be the final 2 teams?
I like some of the teams that you brought up earlier. You said Rice, and you said dip into Texas, get any of those teams that are maybe looking to jump. And then I also like Wyoming. I think a team like that, just to solidify the Northwest, is always a good option.
Yeah, I could see
But
UTSA.
UTSA
maybe
could be good.
UTSA, but they just moved into the
Oh,
AAC.
right,
But
sure.
the only reason I know that just because I'm a huge Roadrunner fan. But
Oh, yeah.
that's all the time that we have today for this segment. Thank you, Daniel, for coming into the studio and dropping some great college football knowledge on us. All right, coming up, we're going to welcome in Stephen Brown to talk everything UCF football, so stay tuned.
Hello, Hitting the Field family. My name is Andrew Montana, host of Season 19 of The Main Show, and on behalf of HTF, we hope you're enjoying today's content, but I'm here to tell you about everything else we have to offer here at the network. Mondays at noon, HTF Bets goes live with 3 of the best on-air faces we have in the program. Andrew Gregg's personality, Tyler Brownrigg's sports expertise, and Nick Cohen's versatility make this show a fan favorite, but also a warm light to guide you through the harsh world that is the sports betting industry. On Tuesdays, Frankie Noble hosts a brand new show called Girls Got Game, blending women in sports, the biggest sports news stories, and creative segments that make for a fun and engaging show. Next up, we've got the Combine, an easygoing, conversational, and podcast-style show dropping on Wednesdays with Ty Patton as your host. No changes there. But a big change for the Combine is the set. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the Combine from our brand new podcast studio. We've got the lights, we've got the cameras, all for Ty Patton to bring the action, and we hope you're just as excited as we are for this amazing opportunity. Much great content from the Combine this semester, as always. Then tune in Thursdays at noon for our second live show, The Main Show, hosted by, well, yours truly. Here we'll cover any sport, any topic, any story, no matter how obscure, be it basketball, football, hockey, soccer, UFC, MMA, cycling, even baseball. But be sure to tune in throughout the semester for our special shows, including drafts, debates, and much, much more. Lastly, Nighttime is aired on Fridays, where Patrick Previty and Matthew Bracker talk about UCF and college sports. From in-depth looks at campus's top storylines to collegiate records being broken nationwide, let Nighttime be your primary college sports resource. And outside of our 5-show roster, be sure to tune into our other content, such as the Studio Days vlog run by Vlog King Nick Cohen, breaking news graphics on our Instagram page, and much more. As well, make sure you're subscribed to Hitting the Field Network on YouTube, as well as following us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. But as for me, I've been Andrew Montana. Thank you so much for watching, and back to your regularly scheduled programming.
And welcome back to Nighttime. We are joined by Stephen Brown to talk some UCF football. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, of course.
Welcome back.
Of course, yeah. Now this was a pretty big week for our Knights. You know, they beat Sam Houston really. It was a really good game for them, and we got some things that we want to talk about moving into conference play. Now, you know, as we've seen these first two games, the running game could be one of the best in the nation. But do you think that an over-reliance on the running game is going to be a problem?
You know, I don't think over-reliance on the running game is going to be a problem. If it's having success the way it is, I see no reason to switch it up. You know, UCF has 4 capable backs in their running back room. So if RJ Harvey gets tired, you know, you can sub in Miles Montgomery, who has really impressed me through 2 games, scoring 3 touchdowns, or sub in Penny Boone, who really hasn't seen much action this season. But as he gets more settled into this offense, I think he'll find his place and he'll find more success later in the season. And then also you have guys like Randy Pittman, who spoke in a press conference on Monday and said that he gets more excited to make a big block in the running play than he does to catch a big pass. So you combine UCF's talented backfield with guys who are willing to do their job, I think the running game should continue to be the focal point of this offense.
Absolutely. And when you see a team so dominant in the run game, and you're saying we're not relying on it, and that's fine, do you think that we can continue this going into conference play? We played Sam Houston, we played an FCS team in New Hampshire. Is that going to be something that we should be monitoring going into TCU?
Right. So while I don't think that UCF will have the same success in terms of yards in their Big 12 opener at TCU, however, I do think they will be able to do enough to get the job done. Gus Malzahn is a creative play caller who gets athletes out with pre-snap motion, gets them out in space to make a play. And speaking of athletes, even if UCF is not able to get that run game going, they can set up screens for wide receiver Xavier Townsend, who has put his ability to make the defense miss on display through those first 2 games. So I'm just excited to see UCF play their first Big 12 game and how they'll respond to the increased level of competition.
Hey, us too. It's going to be a really good test for sure. But, you know, going back to the rushing game, you know, the key back for UCF is definitely RJ Harvey having, 4 touchdowns last week? Insane game. Do you think if RJ can keep up this pace, can he realistically, not just, you know, wishful thinking, you know, since we're UCF, can he realistically win the Heisman?
Yeah, so as much as I would love to come on here and push the RJ Harvey Heisman campaign, you can't help but notice the level of competition that he has been playing through those first 2 games. With that being said, he is doing everything he possibly can to put his name in the running. He scored 4 touchdowns, which tied a program record for single game touchdowns, which tied him for 5th all-time in UCF total career rushing touchdowns. So if he's able to go out there against TCU on Saturday, crack 100 yards for the 3rd straight game this season, and get into the end zone at least once, I don't see how you can't have him in the Heisman running.
Yeah, he's climbing up those record books for UCF. Do you think end of the season, like, he's going to, you know, break any of those records?
Yeah, so I was taking a look at those records, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but if he wants to be the all-time leading touchdown scorer, rushing touchdown scorer at UCF, he has to score 46 touchdowns for his career. He's at 27 right now, so if he can goes nuclear for the rest of the season, he can be the leading touchdown scorer, but I don't think that's going to happen.
19 more touchdowns is a tough call. Yeah.
Certainly he'll have his work cut out for him. Now, he might be in a little bit of a different spot when it comes to the Heisman race if UCF has a ton of success in the Big 12. They are currently, according to ESPN's playoff predictor, for whatever that's worth, put at 31% to make the playoffs. That's the highest among all Big 12 teams. Is this accurate or wishful thinking?
Yeah, so I absolutely think it could be accurate. While it will not come without challenges or adversity, this team is built to make a run for the Big 12 championship. Tight end Randy Pittman in that same press conference on Monday said that competing for a Big 12 championship is one of the goals for the Knights this season. So they will have to play talented Big 12 teams this season. The one that stands out for me most is the last game of the regular season against Utah, led by super senior quarterback Cam Rising.
Super duper senior.
Yeah. So the Knights don't necessarily have to go undefeated to play for the conference championship to get that automatic bid to the playoff, but you definitely want to see them beat teams like TCU on Saturday, like Colorado in 2 weeks at home, and against Arizona in the always popular space game.
Right. Oh, I can't wait for that space game. That's gonna be fun. But yeah, you know, you're right. It's a tough Big 12, and they're gonna have to give their best performances later on in the season. But moving on to something I want to talk about, in that first drive of the game, UCF was flagged 4 times before scoring that R.J. Harvey touchdown. Are you worried at all about UCF's penalty problem, or is this even a problem, or just something that just happened?
Yeah, well, I can't be more worried about the penalty problems than head coach Gus Malzahn already is. UCF had 4 penalties on that first drive, like you mentioned, totaling 25 yards. So when Coach talked about it in the post-game presser, he said, quote, "We still have things we have to clean up. There's no doubt about that." So Coach recognizes the penalty problems, and being able to execute plays cleanly is going to be a point of emphasis for the Knights this Saturday.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the offense, a lot about the run game. How would you rate the defense through the first 2 games? Now, I know obviously lower tier competition, but what do you think about that side of the ball?
Yeah, so on a scale of 1 to 10 for the defense, I'd give them a 9, and I'll get into why here in a second. Obviously, against New Hampshire, the Knights defense only gave up 3 points, forcing 2 turnovers, which is exactly what you want to see against a team of that caliber. And then against Sam Houston State, for the most part, the Bearcats struggled to move the ball on offense, besides that one trick play we all remember where wide receiver Noah Smith threw a 64-yard touchdown, which stunned the Knights. And then the second and last touchdown for the Bearcats of the game came late in the 4th quarter when majority of the starters had already been pulled and the game had already been decided. So, and the reason for the 9 and not that perfect 10 is UCF's inability to sack the quarterback this season, only totaling 1, which is tied for dead last in the nation. So definitely look for them to key in on that this week against TCU, get some more pressure on the quarterback. But despite that 1 sack number, UCF's defense has done their job, and I expect that to continue this Saturday against TCU.
Yeah, no, pressure has definitely been a problem, and it is a little concerning, you know, considering, like we said, you know, the level of talent on some of those rosters in New Hampshire and Sam Houston. So they definitely have to step up their play, the D-line, moving into Big 12 conference play. But speaking of Big 12 conference play, we have our first test next week against TCU. Now, what do you think UCF is going to have to do to beat TCU at their house, especially considering, you know, they weren't a solid team on the road last season?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a really big test for UCF this Saturday. You know, I think a lot of people forget that TCU played in the national championship just 2 years ago. Because they got stomped by Georgia 65-7, but they have a really good coaching staff. Their offensive coordinator used to Coach KJ Jefferson at Arkansas, so they know how he plays. They're going to be keying in on him. But if the Knights want to get it done this weekend against TCU, they're going to have to do everything we talked about at a higher level. The run game is going to have success. They don't necessarily have to keep to their nation-leading average of 419 yards per game, but they will have to run the ball effectively early so they don't fall behind in a hostile road environment such as TCU.
All right, so can we get a game pick? Right now, TCU's favored by 1.5.
Oh, really?
I may have read that wrong. But from what I've seen them favored at 1.5.
Well, good journalism
Pick 'em.
practices. I am going to be covering the brief for this game, so game pick. I'll go UCF though. Just go
Smart
Knights.
man. I would say UCF as well.
I mean, yeah, I'm going to say UCF too. And, I really do think they can do it. They have to get the rushing attack going early.
Oh wait, I see UCF minus 2.5 now. Sorry.
I think we are favored.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Won't be laying anything though.
I think, and for good reason. We do have one of the best rushing attacks
I think
in
they
the
cover.
country, and KJ might have to step up his game a little bit, but he looked pretty good in that Sam Houston game.
Definitely looked a lot more settled in this game. First game rust. It's very difficult for a quarterback to spend four years under an offense and then come in and just be perfect in the first game. So we definitely saw that against New Hampshire, and we saw against Sam Houston, he was able to make strides and improve, completing 12 of 15 passes for 169 yards. So we definitely saw him improve from first game to second game, and that's something that Coach Gus Malzahn has really emphasized in those press conferences, just improving from one game to the next. Definitely a big step up in competition. So definitely going to have to rely on KJ Jefferson a lot with his arm, with his legs. He's a big guy, so he's going to have to make some plays.
I do think he is ready for it. Coming from the SEC and playing in some of the most hostile environments in college football. So coming into TCU, no slander against TCU, Texas Christian University, but I think that he has a chance to have a really good game in there. But that is going to do it for this segment. Now we are going to get into our game of the week, Arizona versus K-State. What do you guys have?
I have Kansas State. They're favored by a touchdown. If my numbers are still somewhat correct.
Big numbers.
So I think that they'll beat Arizona. I like that being the game of the week. They just barely escaped disaster from Tulane, but I think that they'll bounce back this week and beat Arizona.
Yeah, Steven?
Yeah, so UCF doesn't play Kansas State later this year, but they do play Arizona. So I would like to see Kansas State get it done, so that can maybe help UCF's playoff chances to get a conference championship bid. So I'm going with K-State as well.
I kind of have to go with Arizona here. I really like T-Mac. He's having a really good season so far. 12 catches, 315 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think that they have a good chance to pull it off against Kansas State. But that is our episode. That's all the time we have here on Nighttime. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having
you,
me on.
Daniel Valdez, for coming on. Stay tuned for next week. We'll be back. This is Matthew Bracker. This is Patrick Preverty. Have a good one.